Sector 1.
Welcome one and all to this edition of the Retro Video Gamer Podcast. Thank you very much for downloading this episode, and as always, thank you for joining us. If you're new to the show, then welcome as always. If you want to subscribe to the show, you can do by going onto iTunes, just search for the RVG Podcast. There you can click the subscribe button, so every time a new episode is uploaded, it will be downloaded straight to your listening device, which is a lot easier for you. And we really appreciate all feedback on the show as well, because as with everything, you want to improve and you want to make it better for your listeners. So if you want to leave us any feedback, please do that on the RVG forums, or you can go onto iTunes where you can leave a star rating in the comments, and that will also enable us to get a bit more exposure and get the good word of retro gaming out in the world. So that's always a positive, so win-win for everyone.
Yeah, guys, every little bit helps. Every comment here, there, Twitter, Facebook, you name it, we need it.
Yep, exactly. So today's episode is going to be a bit of a different one to what we've normally done. Today we're going to be talking about influential games, whether they be influential on a genre or just anything, just any game which has been influential for whatever reason. We're going to talk about it today. We're going to be talking about 10 games in total. And it's not going to be in any particular order. It's not like, oh, this one's the best one, this one's the worst. It's just kind of a throw at the wall and see what sticks kind of conversation. So
yeah, I don't want anyone going mad over these top 10, because I'm sure people have different choices to what we picked. I mean, we've spent probably a good couple of days chatting about this between ourselves, and we've picked what we think are the most influential games of all time. But like I say, there's bound to be others, and don't get too upset if we haven't picked yours.
Well, if we haven't picked yours, then let us know what your either top 10 games are, or just your opinion on the top influential games are in the comments and everything like that. And it may spark some debate, which is always a good thing. So yeah, just join in the comments and let's have some fun, but don't get rowdy about it. So we're going to start off with Ultima Online, and Keith, I believe you are extremely knowledgeable on this particular game.
I would say knowledgeable to some extent of what I can remember, because it's been a very, very long time. I mean, this is going back to, it would have been the mid-90s, I think, when this came out, 95, 96. I mean,
the days of dial-up.
Yes. I just got my first dial-up modem back in the day. It was 44 kilobyte. Oh, I can't remember what it was called now, but it was this blue monstrosity. It was absolutely ginormous. And I was getting dead excited because I could go on the internet. It's like, what can I actually do? And just get bored looking around AOL and a few awful looking websites which you didn't know anything better about. And around about this time is when Ultima Online come out, and it just absolutely blew me away, because I'd never played anything online before, never been involved in any sort of like a community or a guild, all common stuff today. But back then, it was brand new, because there just wasn't anything like it before. Add to this, I mean, it was all based on the Ultima RPG series, which I think at this point was probably up to its eighth. That was it. It was up to the eighth game in the series. It topped out at 9 when the final one finished. So it was based on that universe. It was all very exciting and all very, very new.
Yeah, so it's the days where the new frontier had come, where the internet was like this big, amazing thing, but it was slow as hell. So,
yes, yeah.
Yeah, so it was...
I mean, I can even remember it back then, because the lag you would experience whilst you were playing if you walked into like a town which was full of people. it would just turn into just a stutter fest, and it could take 5 minutes to get from one side of the screen to the other. And there were some areas where you'd have to go to like the equivalent of auction houses today just to sell stuff, and you'd have people standing there shouting out to selling the wares. And you'd be lucky if you could get halfway across the screen to start the conversation for to actually buy the goods, to get a good deal before before somebody else did.
But it's thinking back on times like that make you realise how far we have come with online gaming.
We've got it now. I mean, like, back then I think I was getting like a 19 kilobyte download speed. No, probably it was like 4 or 5 kilobytes. I mean, I look at me broadband now today, and I've got like an 8 or 9 meg connection, and I'm moaning about that because it's not fast enough, and I want fibre. But how things have come on in just 20 years is just crazy.
Yeah, definitely. These kids with their Call of Duties and everything like that, they don't know how easy they've got it. Back in my day, when I had to put coal on fire to get modem going.
The whole thing about the great thing about Ultima and why it's so influential. I mean, it was based on the Ultima 8 Pagan engine, I believe. They did it up a bit and then rejigged it around to make it look better, but it was like a isometric view, like top-down, side-ish sort of view. And they did an absolutely fantastic job at the time. It's still going to this day, but I think it was one of the first how to pronounce it? MMORPGs. I can say it in my brain, but I can't actually say it out to me. It's MMORPG.
Yeah.
I mean, this led later on to likes of EverQuest, and I think like Star Wars Galaxies and things like that, which eventually turned into Warcraft.
Yeah.
Which is the big behemoth that it is today. But without the original Ultima, I don't think any of that would have happened. I mean, back in its heyday, it was having about 250,000 subscribers. It might have had more, actually. That's probably my memory. I mean, that sounds like a small number now. When you think today, you've got Warcraft with its 7 or 8 million subscribers. I mean, that sounds like nothing, but back then, that's how big the market was. There was no, like, mass world, oh, crazy, we're all into games, that sort of thing, because it wasn't mainstream. So, for the time, it was just incredible. Yeah,
definitely. And, again, the people on Warcraft, you could never imagine, like you were saying before, the stuttering when you were walking along. If people had that today, they'd be flipping their lid, whereas back then, it was just like, it's the norm, and that's it kind of thing.
Yeah.
So... if you're into your Warcrafts and everything like that, if you can get a hold of a copy of Ultima Online, are the servers still going?
You can, that's it. It's still going. You can still subscribe to it. I think it's about £67 a month at the moment.
Yeah.
So, like I say, it's a pretty hardcore community at it now, but what tends to happen is they start off new and then level up to the top level and then start again. But I mean, the world is being improved all the time, and the graphics have advanced a fair bit since back in the day, but they've still got that slanted look, and yeah, it's worth checking out. I'd say it'll run on anything as well. That's another benefit.
Yeah, so if you like your Warcrafts and you fancy a bit of a history lesson, then go back to Ultima.
Yeah.
So the next game on the list, we're kind of saying it started the licensed video game craze and kind of started the movie tie-in games, and whether this is kind of the shape of things to come, I don't know. But this was Ghostbusters, which was released pretty much on everything.
I mean, I don't know if it was actually the first licensed video game, because I'm sure there might have been one or two more on the old Atari 2600 before it, but it was the first proper multi-platform licensed one. It proved that these games, if they were good, could make a lot of money. And I can remember, and I was probably like 4 or 5 when this thing came out. It was on TV everywhere, and adverts and all the rest of it. It covered the US, the UK, Europe. I think it was even crazy in Japan. And off the back of this, all these companies started to realise that, oh, hang on a minute, all we need to do is just make any old junk and stick a license name on, and it will sell. And that's sadly what we've ended up with with a license market we've got today. But I think Ghostbusters was the one that, it kick-started it. That's where it all began.
Old Ghostbusters, as it was on the NES.
I mean, it was also, strangely enough, it was also my first ever ZX Spectrum game, because I remember getting it for Christmas, setting the system up in the kitchen on the 12-inch colour TV. Oh, that was the day. And then I started playing it about 8 o'clock in the morning, and I was still playing it at 9 o'clock at night until my old man came in and turned it off.
Oh, what?
I know. I mean, but going back to playing it now, there just isn't that much to it.
No, there really isn't. No, it's such a simple premise, but it is quite a bugger to play, really, because you gotta watch your fuel, and you gotta watch your equipment, and you gotta buy equipment, and you gotta go around to the different houses, and you gotta go. I will
say I did pick up the Master System version recently because I'm after that collection, but. It's actually it's probably the best version of the game there is. It's bright, it's colourful, the music's spot on. They really rejig some of the like the collecting ghosts and the busting parts and the later parts, which are awful on the NES, for example. And it's a really, really good game. And I didn't think I'd get so addicted to it, but I must have spent about 4 hours on it in one afternoon. Great game.
When you're going up the stairs towards the end of the game, do you have to hammer the button like you do in the NES version?
I haven't got that far yet.
Oh, right, okay. So that'd be something quite interesting if they kept that bit in it where they had to hammer the button to get up the stairs, and obviously most people then.
I don't think they do. I say a lot of the stuff I read online were raving about it as well, and they were saying they'd fixed all the problems in all the other versions. And I think someone mentioned the stairs, but I'm still about 3/4 of the way in. I don't think you can save the game as well, which is a bit annoying because I like to spend ages just like building up the Ghostbusters and making a load of money and that sort of thing.
Making the money for the ghosts, yeah. But I think this is quite an interesting thing to talk about. Is obviously the licensed game, because are they all as bad as people make them out to be, or is there any good ones out there? Because
there's always the odd one, even from back in the day. I mean, my favourite one coming around about 90s, probably earlier, 88, 89, which was the Batman the movie game on the Amiga. And I can just remember that at the time, just blowing my brain. I'd never seen anything like it before. It was a really, really good game. And sadly, I didn't have an Amiga, and I was around with friends. And I remember running home and pleading with my mother to take me over to Morrison's, which is where they sold all the Spectrum games at the time. Because I was like, I've got to play this game. I've got to have a copy. She was pretty annoyed with me because I wouldn't leave her alone for like 2 days. And when she dragged me over there and we bought a copy of it, and I'll come up in this big black box, and I took it home, and it was an okay version, but the Spectrum being the Spectrum, you know what the graphics are like and everything, and I was convincing myself that it looked just as good as the Amiga one, and I was playing it again for an entire afternoon, and I was getting so wound up because they had this driving section which isn't in the Amiga version. It's a different perspective because it's on the Spectrum, and I was getting so frustrated. I actually ended up flinging the joystick across the room and hitting the wall, and it broke the stick. I snapped the stick down the side, and it wouldn't work anymore. And of course, I was only a kid, so I had no money, so I couldn't, because they were about £10 at the time, and I was in a panic because I didn't know what I had to go and hide it so my mother wouldn't find it. So then I was stuck playing keyboard-only games for several months. So yeah, Batman almost broke my childhood.
God. Well, one game I can think of off the top of my head, which was a good movie tie-in game, was Spider-Man 2 for the GameCube. I thought that was brilliant, but I might save this kind of conversation for maybe a Bitecast one day, because I think it's quite an interesting one to discuss, really, because... We
could spin off into anything. I mean, they're even licensed games and things like point-and-click adventures, because I remember the Indiana Jones one. There has been a lot of good licensed games, but like with all things, there's been a lot of bad films and a lot of bad licensed games attached to them. Yeah. It's usually the very kiddie ones, like Shrek-type films, that sort of thing, or the Disney ones, usually.
Yeah, but we'll move on from this now, so we're going to go to our next one. And it's the third entry in a franchise, but this is kind of where we feel the franchise really took off. And this is Grand Theft Auto 3. Now, I remember this one coming out when it came out, and obviously you had the first one come out, and I feel it did start it off, but it didn't really sell that well, and it didn't really make much of an impact. We did have
this discussion between ourselves, because I know Dan wanted to put the first one forward, but I think, with it being influential, my thoughts are just like, well, the one where it really took off, I mean, the first one was a good game. I mean, I played it to death myself. I had it on the PC and the PlayStation at one point, way before the third one ever came out. But it was, at the time, to me, it just felt, it's just an interesting type. It's just an interesting sort of open city style game, a bit of a fun shooter. And it wasn't until the third one came out, I feel, where you had this 3D sandbox game world to explore. It was like the perfect update of the very first game, but they added all like the amazing music, and then the very, very dark story, and all the fun bits, and the guns and the weapons and the vehicles, and it just took off from there. I mean, without that third one, I think, giving people a kick up the backside, you wouldn't have had, because I mean, the next one was like Vice City, and then San Andreas, and then eventually you got the fourth one, which I think turned into the billion-dollar seller, and it's just never stopped ever since.
No, it really hasn't. Obviously, with Grand Theft Auto 5 being as popular as it is now, it's just only going to get stronger and stronger. But yeah, it really does show that something from such a simple premise can become such a huge juggernaut of a game. And like I said, I remember this one coming out, and I was too young to play at the time, so I'd maybe get a sneaky look at my brother playing it, because my brother was a couple of years older than me, and I'd watch him play, and I thought, one day I'm going to get to play this game and everything like that. And yeah, it's just one of those games that when you got to that chance that you got to play on it, you were just drawn in by it because of the...
I mean, I really do think that without that kick-starting off, we would never have got that sandbox-style open world, because the number of games that tried ripping it off afterwards and trying to do similar things, and it was all because of Grand Theft Auto. I mean, they even, as a company, inspired themselves like, because they span it off into the Red Dead.
Red Dead Redemption.
That's it. The second one of that series, which was just amazing, and there was no cars in it. The guy was riding a horse and car at some points in it, but it was an absolutely fantastic game, and in a way, it was just a bit of a downgrade of the Grand Theft Auto series, because you would take in that sort of a world and plonk it in the Wild West, and it worked brilliantly.
Yeah,
in fact, so much I wish they'd do a damn sequel to that.
Yeah, I wish they would as well. It's one conversation I've had quite a lot with people is, when are they going to do a Red Dead Redemption 2? There's been whispers, but I think it'd be quite a while till that one comes out, because obviously people are just clamouring for Grand Theft Auto.
It's been a while, hasn't it? Was it 2009 that came out?
Somewhere around there, yeah, because I remember when it was released, it was just impossible to get a hold of a copy.
It was. I mean, I was extremely lucky, because I can remember seeing a trailer for it in the cinema, because I had no idea this was coming. And this was the time when I was going through that quiet period where I wasn't bothered with the current Xbox or the PlayStation. I was getting a bit bored of it all, because it all seemed a bit samey. I was sat there watching a trailer or something, and Red Dead Redemption comes up, and I'm like, my God, this is a game. And I thought, I'm going to pre-order a copy of this, and when I got it, I just couldn't put it down. And that's, again, you would never have had anything like that if you'd not had that original one in Grand Theft Auto 3.
No, definitely not, no. And you wouldn't have had the cool soundtracks and everything like that to go with it. And you wouldn't have got Vice City, which I think is just awesome.
Vice City is probably the best in the series. I know they improved the mechanics and stuff later on, but I mean, I don't know what version you played, Dan. Mine was the Xbox back in the day, because I didn't have a PS2 for ages until later on in its life.
It was PS2 for me.
Yeah. Well, the great thing about the Xbox version is because you had the hard drive, you could, because this is going, it's the very, very first Xbox. You could copy loads of music onto it, dump it on there, and then whilst you were driving around on the beaches and stuff, you could play your own music through the car stereos. Now, that's something you can do so easily now on consoles and things, just import music collections and things like that. But back then, it was just something groundbreaking, and I can remember driving down the sunny beaches, blowing people away, listening to a Genesis and stuff. It was just bonkers, and it was just one of amazing experiences.
So you were mowing down people whilst it was like, I can't dance, I can't talk. That is such a bizarre image that will never leave me now. I remember it was one of those things that people just kind of found out, but you could do that sort of with the very first game on the PC. if you loaded up the game on the PC, obviously from the CD, once the game had loaded, if you took the game disc out of the drive and popped in an audio CD, it would trick it into thinking it was reading from the game disc, and it would start playing random tracks off your CDs.
Right. Uh-huh.
Yeah, so, yeah, that was quite fun. But yeah, definitely, I do agree with the Xbox thing, yeah. It was amazing back then to be able to do that. You used to be able to do that with the Tony Hawk's games as well on the original Xbox, so that's why I started playing the Tony Hawk's games on there to do that. But that's Grand Theft Auto 3. I think everyone will agree it's a fantastic game, and it really kick-started the franchise in a massive way.
Yeah, certainly belongs on the list, I think, so.
Yes, well deserving. Now this next one, again, I feel is very well deserving, and a couple of years ago it got a re-release, a 3D re-release, and it's well, yeah, you could say sequel, has very, very recently finally got its 3D re-release, and of course I am talking about The Legend of Zelda, The Ocarina of Time, which was originally on the Nintendo 64. Do you remember this coming out the first time round?
Oh my god, I was at the store at midnight, and I was about 15 at the time. Again, if people are just going to say, oh god, they've included, Ocarina of Time, everybody expects that, but my god, this wasn't just a game, it was a lifestyle. I mean, when I can remember actually at the time poring over all these magazines and N64 magazine and all these. I remember these reporters being taken over to Belgium or something like that to this big Nintendo press event, and they basically just gave them about 10 pictures, and all they did for like 30 pages of this mag was just repeat the pictures and blow them up huge, and it was just things of like they were able to play it up to where you could go to Zelda's to the castle and walk around the gardens, and they didn't get much further than that. And they just had so few pictures of it, but even then I can remember sitting there and going, oh my god, this is just going to be amazing. And I remember the time the N64 game just cost a fortune. I think it was about £80 or something like this, and I scraped and borrowed and begged and everything to get money for it. And I remember going down to the game shop at the time, and because he didn't know of an exact release date, and I could never get him to phone me. I would always have to. It was a very, very annoying game shop, but what can you do when you're stuck? That's the only place you can go. And I remember going down there at the time, and he says, you won't believe the craze what's been going on with this. He says, I've had like 6 people try to offer me £200 for it. And I'm like, where's my goddamn copy? And I took it home, and that would have been, oh god, it would have been 98, I think, December 98, and that was just Christmas gone after that. I never played anything else for about 4 months.
No, I don't blame you. I know, like you quite rightfully said, people are going to go, oh god, Ocarina of Time, not this again. But you cannot deny the impact it had on not just the Legend of Zelda franchise, but just the N64 in general as well.
I'd say it introduced I would say RPGs or action role playing games, I suppose, into the 3D realms. I mean, basically it was, before this you had A Link to the Past and the original Zelda games. They were converted brilliantly into 3D, and the world was incredibly deep, and you could explore all the corners. It looked amazing for what you could do at the time. There was just nothing else like it. I mean, I can remember seeing things like the infamous Night Fight trailer, and it was only about 40 seconds, and it was basically Link squaring off about a knight. And if you go back and watch it now, it's in some awful polygons, which look even worse than what eventually came out on the N64. But at the time, it just captivated people. And then when you actually got in the game and you could walk around with the old controller and the Z lock on, and actually stand there and lock onto baddies and fight him and defend with a sword and the shield, and there'd been nothing like that up until that point. And then because I remember it at the time, thinking afterwards when I finally finished the game and going on, well, God, what else can I play that's going to be like this? And it was a year or two before anything even started to dare approach that sort of thing on the action side. And Zelda's had its ups and downs ever since then, but I think, the number of games that go on about it being the best game of all time and stuff, and even going back to the 3D version, it's so worth it. The design is just so perfect.
Yeah. So I take it you've played the re-release of it then on the 3DS.
To death, I'm afraid.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of because there's a new 3DS XL out. I'm not buying one for a good while, but because I think they believe they've fixed all the 3D problems now.
Yes, they have.
Because they've got the eye tracking on. And I basically, whenever I played the 3DS, I'd just turn off the 3D after a while because it was just so annoying. Because it's so awkward to line it up. But I've been hearing like it's now they've fixed it and it's got eye tracking in there. Well, no matter where you move, the 3D stays with you. I'm tempted to go back and have another playthrough and play it all in 3D as it should be done.
Yeah, it's one of those games that even today, at today's standard of gaming, it's still hard as nails. I can honestly say that because I give it a whirl and I was just like, my God, it's still as hard as it was back in the day. And even like because obviously now Majora's Mask is with us. And that just kind of continues on the Ocarina of Time story and everything like that. So I think it's one of those, if you play Ocarina of Time, you complete it, you enjoy it, then you have to kind of move on to Majora's Mask and enjoy the weird and wackiness that comes with that title, to be honest.
I will have to say, I never liked Majora's Mask.
Oh, really?
I never thought I didn't think it was a very good game.
Oh, right, fair enough.
I know, it's just, and there's probably people falling over in shock at that, but I could never get on with it, and it was all down to the day and night cycle and the 3 days.
Right, okay.
I'm just mad. Just don't worry about me.
Well, a lot of the stuff which people take for granted now in the Legend of Zelda franchise, like you said, the Z-Lock and everything like that, is thanks to Ocarina of Time, because you wouldn't have all that kind of stuff if Ocarina of Time didn't come out the way it did. So, big up to Ocarina of Time, and it will continue to keep being on top 10 lists and top influential lists. So, people who whinge about it being on Arsball, I'm sorry, it's going to keep appearing. So, sorry.
Yeah, tough.
Yeah, tough, yeah. And this next one, I'm sure, again, people are going to go, oh God, not this one as well. And you've followed them back to back with each other. But I'm sorry, you cannot deny this game is, one, absolutely incredible. And two, it made such a huge impact, again, on the Nintendo 64 and 3D gaming in general. I am, of course, talking about Mario 64 with the scarily big Mario face when you start the game up, which is quite frightening, in my opinion.
I suppose there's not much that can be said about this that hasn't been said before, but I mean, I can remember the impact it had when it came out because it was a packing title, and it was just incredible. I mean, I played Mario 3 and Super Mario World to death, and at the time, all the PlayStation had come out, and I think the Saturn roughly around by this time, and they were all dabbling in like these. They weren't really 3D platformers; they were more like 2.5D. So to move around, you'd have to like stop the character and turn, and then it was like a tank really to move around. Or everything was very stilted and stuck. And then you had Mario 64. And it was just so fluid and brilliant, and the whole how each level you could explore it was like a proper 3D interactive world. That's what a platformer should be, and I played it to death, and I topped out all the stars and everything, and I would go back to it for years. It was absolutely amazing for its time, and I don't think it's been beaten since.
No, definitely not. It really is a prime example of how to do a 2D franchise to go into the 3D realm, and this is how to do it right. Because I mean, at the time we were getting a lot of Nintendo franchises getting a 3D release. So you had like obviously Mario, you had the Zeldas, which were done very well. But then unfortunately you got the other side of the spectrum, like the Castlevania games, which came to the N64, which in my opinion weren't very good. Because you had Super Castlevania 4, which was absolutely incredible. And then you think, right...
I would just say, the music from Castlevania 4, I've still got that bookmark from YouTube, but of that first level when he's walking along and it sounds like a guitar kicking in, it's amazing.
Yeah, definitely.
Sorry, carry on.
No, that's a very, very good point. But we were sort of excited. We were thinking, yes, we're getting a 3D Castlevania game, and... I can't remember whether you had obviously you'd had Mario 64. I can't remember whether you'd had Ocarina of Time by this point, but obviously you tried Mario 64 and you were like, yes, it's going to be really good. It's going to be basically Castlevania 4 but in 3D, so it's going to be amazing.
Mario with a whip is what we were expecting,
Yeah, and we didn't get that. So when you see games like Mario 64 and then you compare them with games like that, you just think, well, why couldn't they get it right as well? But there you go. But Mario 64 is a legendary game. If you haven't played it, then I urge you to go out and play it. It, again, is one of those games which can be quite tricky at times, but when you die, it's not because of camera or anything like that. It is genuinely because it's your fault. So you cannot fault this game. I don't want to go too much more about it because, as Keith quite rightfully said, everyone has said everything about it. So we just wanted to kind of tip our hat to it because, well, it's Mario 64. You cannot deny it's amazing. So just go out and play it. Seriously, just go out and play it.
And before anyone starts going on this rubbish argument that some of the later games were better, just behave yourselves. Give yourselves a slap. That's the end of that one.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yes. So this next game is just ridiculously influential. It's probably one of the best-selling puzzle games of all time. I might be wrong in that, but that's my opinion. I feel it probably is one of the most... It's either one of or it is the highest-selling puzzle game of all time. And it's the mighty Tetris. A very simple concept, but it's one which will just go on forever and ever and ever. It's a timeless game which will never go out of fashion. No matter what version they put out of it, whether it's a 3D version, whether it's on the PlayStation, whether it's on the Nintendo, whether it's on whatever system, people will just want to play it, and other companies have tried to capitalise on the success of that, i.e. Sega with Columns.
Yeah, I mean, well, Columns it's an obvious rip-off because they were, it's obviously they're trying to get something for their own handheld to beat the Game Boy, and it was a good attempt, but it just didn't have that edge to it. It just wasn't as addictive. It was good, but it wasn't as addictive as Tetris.
No, it's one of the, I feel, because I know people who like Columns, and we were a Sega household when I was growing up, and we obviously had the Mega Drive, and we had Columns, and my mum was absolutely addicted to Columns. Every night you would hear the signature sounds of Columns and the signature music and everything like that. But I get the feeling, like you said, everyone who played Columns probably was just like, they played it for a bit and then that was it, then they kind of stopped. Whereas with Tetris, you would lose hours playing that game. So, I mean, I think they're even trying to do fully fledged tournaments with the Game Boy version. I think they're trying to get sort of a Kickstarter going for that kind of thing.
It would not surprise me.
Yeah, but I know plenty of people who buy original Game Boys just to play the original Tetris. That's how influential and amazing this game is. They've done some other alright versions, like I know they did one for the 3DS, which was okay, but you just can't beat the original and the best, in my opinion.
Yeah, perfect pocket game.
Yeah, definitely. A perfect time waster. Right, well, we'll move on to now, and the next thing is more talking about series of games rather than a single game. So we're going to be talking about the Elder Scrolls series. I played Morrowind quite a lot back in the day because I used to play it on the PC. A friend of mine had a copy of it. I'm sure it was about... So it was something stupid, like it was about 6 discs or something like that. I could be wrong. If you remember it better, Keith, then tell me. But I'm sure it's about 6 discs.
It was. I vaguely remember it being in a massive, massive stack of discs.
Yeah.
Because were DVDs even out at that time?
No. It was still CDs.
I think, yeah. It was absolutely a huge game. I mean, the Elder Scrolls series goes back a few years because I think that was the 3rd one in the... Yeah, because Oblivion's the 4th game. I never played the first 2 back in the day, but they were very... Oh, they were all 3D, open-ended, like, role-playing games. But they tended to have like randomly generated dungeons or worlds, and I think every experience was new at the time. They did something new with every version, and it wasn't until Morrowind really where they sort of got into stride of how to design that sort of world. But I mean, every RPG these days, I think, is it always looks back to this series. I mean, with the latest one being, what's not even the latest one, Skyrim's going back about 4 years now. I think 2011, yeah. I mean, I must have put about 150 hours into that, which is about nuts. But I know on the game before that, Oblivion, somebody I know put in about, I think it was 996 hours. This is whilst he was in college, the lunatic. But I mean, I remember looking at his save and how the hell have you done that? And he was just like, well, it was quiet, it was summer, and I just wanted to focus and put some time in. And I'm like, you must have put about 5 years worth of game time, for one summer. How have you managed that? But it was just incredibly addictive, and every time as that series has gone on, it's improved. And the great thing is, if you look at something today like the new Dragon Age Inquisition, it's a game I've been playing to death. I don't know if you've had experience with that, Dan.
I haven't, no. I've had many people say, pick it up, play it. So yeah, I think one day it's going to have to happen.
Yeah, I mean, I picked it up, and I must have put about 110 hours into it. This is since Christmas. And I've only just finished it a couple of weeks ago, and it was an amazing experience. Really, really good, really open-ended. And all I kept thinking to myself while I was playing it is, it's not as good. It's a really good game, but it's not as good as Skyrim. If only they'd done this and only they'd done that. But you can see where they've had the influence of these bits from Skyrim and Oblivion, which they've grown on. I mean, again, going back to like Oblivion, I'm just thinking of something I was reading about the other day, but it was one of the first Xbox games which did, what's it called? DLC.
Yeah.
And it's quite famous and funny, really, because they introduced something called the horse armour, which was it was 400 points, I think, which was the equivalent of about £1.69 back then. It was 2006, I think it was. And at the time, all it was armour for a horse. It didn't do anything. I mean, it looked all right, but it was just an absolute shocking thing. And everyone would always laugh and joke about, oh, God, they're going to sell more horse armour. It was just rip-off DLC. But again, that's still referred to this day, almost 10 years later. It just had that much of an influence. And anyway, yeah, I think that the Elder Scrolls series has influenced so many RPGs in the last 10 to 15 years.
Well, it still continues to influence because obviously they're currently developing the Legend of Zelda for the Wii U, and one of the big influences they keep mentioning is Skyrim.
Yeah, the open world of Skyrim. They want to tackle that. Yeah.
Yeah. So even today, the Elder Scrolls series is still influencing other games, and it all started from those PC games with probably their 20 discs and everything like that, and having to install it in bits because it'd say right insert disc 2, then you'd have to put that in and go from there. But
I do know that if you because I'm at the point where I'm looking at getting a new PC, and I'm going to be getting a gaming PC for the whole Oculus thing that's coming up. But as I've been waiting, I've been thinking, oh, well, what PC can I get next? Because I've got a Mac at the moment. And I keep thinking, well, what if I go back to like Oblivion and Morrowind? Because I wonder what the mod community's done. And just look into the community for all three, the latest, the last ones of the series. Some of them they've included like incredible updated high res textures. So like Morrowind, it's like 10 or 15 years ago. Now looks even more incredible and more. They've got rid of the fog and the draw distance and stuff. And it's very interesting to go back to something like that and to see that people are still tinkering with them. They love them so much, and yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing what the mod community can do with old games, but I'm sure every man and his dog have played at least one of the games from the Elder Scrolls series. But if you haven't, then just go give them a try and see what you think. But you have to appreciate the influence it's had, and like even like we said, Skyrim is continuing that trend of Elder Scrolls just being an influential franchise. So go check them out.
Yeah, go check them out. And if anyone's having grumbles or not too sure about Skyrim, just go online and search its launch trailer, and it's only about a minute long, but just sit there and listen to that music and the images that come up, and then just come away and just not want to play that game.
Well, this next one's another big PC game which I played quite a lot, and it's one of those games I kind of miss because I don't have a PC anymore and I wish I could still play it, and that is Theme Park. And I also want to mention Theme Hospital as well, because that game was brilliant as well. Yeah. But these kind of started the God hand games where you are God and you basically you run the world kind of thing, and it ties in with like games like Populous and The Sims as well. But I loved Theme Park to death back in the day. There was so many days I would waste hours upon hours upon hours creating theme parks and keeping them tidy, and then when my upgrade would come through and I'd get a little bit more money from my bank and everything like that, I'd want to put a new ride in, and then there was the odd one or two ride you could actually, well, in Theme Park you could actually go on the ride. Obviously Roller Coaster Tycoon then took that idea and just went off with it and made it so you could go on every single ride. But they really, Bullfrog, who made the theme park and the theme hospital games, they really hit the nail perfectly, because they had that good blend of basically the mechanics of the game. So you'd have like all your different pieces that you'd have to put in, but they
were always fun.
Yeah,
that was the great thing about them. They were very, in a way, they were very, very serious, but not actually serious to play. They were always, it was very boring stat management at the end of the day with a building attached on, but they had a very funny and cheeky side. It was a very British sense of humour to it all, I thought.
Yeah, which is exactly what I was about to say, to be honest, because, for example, in Theme Hospital, you get people with bloaty head disease, and you'd see their heads blowing up, and then there'd be people being sick everywhere and things like that. And
I mean, I always used to love creating this like super over the top roller coaster, and having like a burger stand and a drink stand just before the entrance, so they come in, and then have this big long path, and at the end having a toilet at the end of this maze of paths. That was amazing fun, and watch all these people run. I'm just insane again, I'm sorry.
No, I completely agree. I think I did very, very similar things. Like, if people wanted to get to something, I'd always try and put blocks in their way, because at the end of the day, when you're a kid, you just wanted to make people's lives misery. And what a perfect way to do it than going on your computer and not having to harm physical people, just going on seeing these little people and just see what happens. And I like I said, I miss the theme park game. I miss it, and I'm probably gonna have to try it. I think you can get Theme Park for the iPad and iPhone, I think.
Oh yeah, don't touch that with a barge.
No, I have a feeling that'd be the
answer. They turned it into a free to play, a
paywall.
Yeah, a paywall, and I think maybe like the first 2 or 3 rides are free, and then you have to start paying 69 pence or something ridiculous. And it's not very good. I mean, I had a go with it at first, and I never paid for anything, but I just could not get on with it.
No, it's such a fantastic. Like, I always want to play Theme Park and Theme Hospital. I played a little bit of Roller Coaster Tycoon back in the day, but I only played the first one, and me and Keith were talking before we started recording that apparently I missed out massively by not playing the second theme. Not playing the second.
The first one was a lot more. I felt was a lot more boring because it was more straightforward, but the second one, it's like they had the mechanics and the system in place, and then the second one they seemed to add more of the fun, and you could just do more and more with it. And I can remember just losing weeks and weeks of that, because in one attempt I actually tried to design my own Alton Parks. I think it was mid-90s, so yeah. It sounds nuts, but that's how good it was. You could do something like that if you had like an overhead map of a park. You could build something very, very similar to it. And they just ran with the whole theme park thing where you could the research and stuff. It was such a bigger game, much more expanded and much more. I don't think intelligence the right word. It was. I think it was a better game overall. So
yeah, I'm willing to bet that if you went on YouTube, there would probably be people playing like the original Roller Coaster Tycoon things and recreating like you were doing, Keith, like real theme parks. And recreating them in the game and then showing them off on YouTube. So I'm probably going to have to check that now after we stop recording this episode.
It does. I'm quite sad to say. I mean, I have an old PC that I have knocking around in the back room somewhere, because every so often I want to play like a really old DOS game or something. I've just not got something that'll do it. And I've every PC I've ever had, I always have a copy of Roller Coaster Tycoon 2 installed somewhere, because every so often I'll go back and just have a bit of a playthrough. Okay. I think actually they released a theme park add-on part, which was probably the equivalent of the first DLC or something at the time. I can't remember, but it basically had all designs of real parks, so you could actually end up getting the equivalent of Alton Towers back then with all the official rides, and I think as well. Very interesting for the time.
I never knew that, so you do learn something new every day. So the next one, again, is a PC game, but it's one, I reckon people will say, oh god, not that again, but everyone will understand why we've put it on the list, because it pretty much kick-started the first-person shooter genre, so all you kids who are playing Call of Duties and your Battlefields have this game to thank, and I am, of course, talking about the mighty Doom. And it's just amazing game that it is, and I'll let you drive this one, Keith.
Yeah, I mean, people are obviously going to say the sequel was better, and yes, it was a great game. I mean, the game I played before Doom, I think, really kicked off was it Castle Wolfenstein? Oh, sorry, Wolfenstein 3D back in the day, because I had a shareware version of that back in the early 90s. But Doom was where they got everything just came together. The design was spot on. The maps were great. The way the weapons worked, the fun, the humour. I mean, it inspired things like Duke Nukem. Basically, all your first-person shooters after that were trying to meet that level of addiction. And I think as Halo, the designers put it later on, they always want to come up with that 20 seconds of fun and then just keep repeating it every few minutes. And I don't think you'd have any of that without Doom. That's where it all started.
Yeah, of course. And obviously you had games, like you said, like Duke Nukem 3D coming along. Games like Quake as well, where they were basically trying to capitalise on the success of Doom. But it's one of those games that when it came out, it had such a huge impact. And it was ported to most systems, whether it be because the Super Nintendo got a version. I think the Jag got a version, if I remember right, because I think it was
with a shrunken screen on. I think
I think it was Silent Doom as well on the Jag. So I don't think it had the music, but the music as well in that game is so memorable. I probably most people I know who play obviously retro games, they have the Doom soundtrack on their iPods to listen to because it's that good, and it just had that creepy feel, but it did have a bit of light humour in it as well, so you cannot deny Doom is amazing, and people still play it today, and obviously John Romero, who's the creator of Doom, came over to the UK for a retro event last year. He went to Revival, and who knows, he may come back over again, so if you're a Doom fan, keep your eye out, he may be back in the UK.
Meet him.
Yeah, you may meet him, and as well, if you're at Revival and you got the chance, you got to play against John in a game of Doom as well, which was obviously quite an interesting event to see if people.
Yeah, actually, I'd be interested to, because I've not heard much about that. I'd be interested to know how good he is.
I believe people did beat him.
Oh right.
But these are probably people who probably got their practicing quite a bit before they went to the event. So I don't blame them in all honesty, because I can guarantee if I got the chance to play against like a game developer of a game I really liked, I'd think, right, I want to beat him. I want to beat him. So I don't blame them for wanting to beat him. So that's Doom. And the final game we're going to talk about today is, some people say it kickstarted the whole thing of video games. In my opinion, it kind of made video games more popular because there were games further back than this one which kind of started it. But this one really did the boom and got everything rolling, and this is Pong. Yeah. Such a simple game.
I mean,
but
there's
it's timeless.
Nothing to it. You know, it's two bats and a ball. But without this making absolute fortune in arcades, you just wouldn't have had Nolan Bushnell going on to push to make the home Atari, and you know, because that was one of the original games and what people were attracted to. And he just went off the back of that and just marketed it like crazy, and it just boomed, and they had the whole Atari craze, and it just would not have happened without Pong.
No, of course it wouldn't. And obviously, you had all the Pong consoles that came after it, and all the many different companies basically making them. And there's people who out there who just collect Pong machines because there's that many of them.
Yeah.
But it's a game you can give it to anyone in the world. You can go up to anyone, man, woman, child, and you can give them a controller and say, right, let's play this. And I can guarantee within a minute of you two playing it, you'll just be sucked in, and you'll be just addicted, and you'll just want to beat each other. And the moment that I remember watching an interview with one of the creators of Pong, and he said the moment they realise we've got a winner on our hands is the minute they put that scoreboard at the top of the screen, because then you could have both players tracking each other's scores, and it would add that competitiveness to the game. So, but I can guarantee you give it to a young child and they will grasp it very quickly, and they'll want to keep playing it because it proves you don't need ridiculous over-the-top stories and superior graphics to make an amazing game.
Just pure gameplay.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't know how accurate this is, so if this is wrong, I do apologise. But I get the feeling it could be one of the first two-player games, or maybe it is the first two-player game, I don't know. But I believe it's one of the first sort of multiplayer games that really made people want to play games together. So
you've got a lot to be grateful to.
Yes, exactly. And it's an amazing game that's still being played today, and there have been many iterations of it, like upgrades where they've made the graphics better and they've put loads of stupid things into it to make it up to date and modern, but they don't need to. Just release it as it is and people will play it.
Yeah, people will always play Pong.
Yep, exactly. Well, that's it. That's our I wouldn't say top 10, but they're 10 games which we feel are extremely influential. As we said at the start, if there are any games we missed, or there's any games which you feel desperately needed to be in that list, then let us know in the comments. Let us know of any games we missed. And like I said, if we can get a debate going, absolutely fantastic, because debate's always good and we don't want any violent behaviour.
Come see us on the forums, guys.
Yeah, come see us on the forums and give us a chat about what your influential games are and your opinions on them. Well, that's it for this edition of the Retro Video Gamer Podcast. Thank you very much for listening. Thank you very much for downloading. Keep enjoying retro gaming. Keep it retro, and we'll see you next time.
Yeah, see you next time.